Welcome to Accountable Love, home of the Love Snobs, where love is a group journey. My name is Jerry.
My name is Aziz.
And today we're going to talk about how superiority complexes affect relationships.
Love snobs, love snobs, love snobs. The love snobs have surfaced. You know, the people that actually use honesty to communicate. The genuine friends that refuse to let you feel sorry for yourself. Yes, those people.
You know, the friends that collect your tears every time life makes your eyes rain. The love snobs, the people that don't allow you to settle. Support your dreams, but don't support you sleeping with just anybody.
You know, the friends that are so judgmental they ask you to stay away from negative people and encourage you to surround yourself with positive people.
Yes, that friend. The friends that love you even when you refuse to love yourself.
You know, the love snobs.
Yeah, as you know, this is season 4, and the theme of season 4 is let's be clear here. So we're going to talk about how superiority complexes affect the relationship, and we're going to break down what is it truly, how do they affect our relationships, how can we make adjustments, and what we gain in the process.
Yes. So first thing we want to do is basically define it. By dictionary.com defines it as an exaggerated feeling of one's own superiority, which, you know, is vague. It can be all kinds of things. And when we first thing we think of is the elite. When we think of having a superiority complex, we think of the wealthy. We think of the person who feels like they're the very attractive person, the person who dresses nice, the person who has no time, the person who pays for luxuries, things of that nature. We think of all kinds of things when we think of superiority. We think conceit, we think vanity,
Yeah.
we think of things of that nature. But what is it truly? Well, we would say it's all those things, as well as playing the victim. You know,
Yeah, not
playing
making
the
a
victim,
decision, being in the
not making a
background.
decision, being in the background, trying to, govern the relationship from behind, believing your emotions are more important than the other person's emotions, and really highlighting emotions to govern your relationships over principles. We think that is a form of having a superiority complex.
Well, it's easy to identify it with somebody who puts themselves out there and who's bold and doesn't mind being the center of attention, right? It's the people that hide in the background because they govern the relationship with their emotions, and their emotions are always valid, or they want their emotions to always be validated, that it becomes they run the relationship. But
Definitely.
those people go undetected all the time because you don't ever think of them as being someone who's controlling the relationship, but they're controlling the relationship.
Definitely. It's an amazing movie. Obviously I love watching relationship movies, whether it's romantic comedies, whether it's, you know, a drama, so on and so forth. And obviously we watch romantic, relationships, movies together, things of that nature. And what we always see, the person that is struggling, the person that's getting told what to do, they become that hero. They become the person who's facing all the adversity. They become the story. But they never open their mouth. They never tell the person what they're doing to them is wrong. They never stand up to themselves for themselves into the end of the movie, you know. So when we look at it, we're like, oh, everybody resonates with that person because there's a bunch of them and less leaders.
Mm-hmm.
So we badger the leader throughout the whole movie because the person didn't open their mouth, and they're expected for the other person to just understand what they're going through or what they're feeling throughout the whole movie. But when they decide that they don't want to be with the person, or they decide they're fed up, they have an outpour of emotions. They're dismissive. They close up. They eliminate the person from their life, and the person has no clue of what's going on. I mean, what's
Yeah,
that
and
movie that you always use?
who, me?
Yeah, you always use the movie with Kate Hudson.
Oh yeah, something borrowed.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was gonna be my next thing. Is always that storyline. The storyline of I was gonna use a man and a woman, but that's perfect. You have an outgoing friend who super ambitious, never always always comfortable being in the spotlight, going for what they want, getting what they want, and then you have the friend on the sideline who the movie portrays them as their lackey, right?
mhm,
Somebody who never had a shot anyway because this person was always going to steal their thunder anyway. And when in the movie, the sick part about it is that you are rooting for, the most people are rooting for the underdog, right?
Definitely.
Who was super shady. Like, she was sleeping with homegirl's man
Definitely.
on the low.
Mhm.
And they ended up together eventually, but the point is that she was the shady one all along, because at least the Kate Hudson was being who she was.
Definitely.
So her
Exactly
friend
who
bought
she
into
was.
who she was.
And she was honest and open and
Yeah.
straightforward about everything she was. And that's obviously an example of a person that is not, doesn't have a superiority complex, because she believes that she picked the friend she wanted to pick. She dealt with the friend she wanted to deal with. She believes that this person's her friend. And all the while, the person is not her friend. Feels uncomfortable around her. And we tend to think that's the person with the superiority complex, because that's painted. That's what's painted for us. But it's a person who exaggerates their own superiority. So if the whole relationship is about you, your emotion, how you feeling, what's going on with you, you need to look in the mirror and think, am I the one that's actually suffering from having a superiority complex? Or is it really the person who's truly being who they are, truly explaining what they want, and truly going after what they want and being the go getter?
Man, the reality is, people connect with people for a reason. So they became friends for like the other, at some point they both believed they was getting something out of the relationship. So we, don't get it twisted. Like, you always see it too, like with the man and the woman dynamic, husband wife, right? Woman is overbearing, she's seemingly controlling, she is cold, and she's all these things, right? And then you have the loving husband who can't seem to get a break, who can't seem to get, his wife's attention,
And he
and all
wants to
these.
do everything for her.
Yeah, he does it. He takes care of the kids. He cooks
Yeah, yeah,
dinner.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
He's present, and she's this workaholic B. And you know what I mean? Like, and they pay her to be the villain, and he's just this amazing guy, and he winds up cheating on her, but you're rooting for him
Him to be
because
with the new woman.
yeah, because she's understanding and she's this,
Yeah,
she's
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But it's like, never once do people think about, like, he chose her, they chose each other. So
Definitely.
he was one for a reason, for her strength, and now
Definitely.
her
And
strengths
now he's
became an
resenting.
issue. Yeah,
Mhm.
like, it's so, like, we see that movie all the time.
Definitely.
So yeah, it's like one of those things where it's people don't make decisions.
You see
People
it in
don't want to,
reverse. You see it in, you see it with the man and woman dynamic.
yeah,
You see it with the woman and male dynamic. It's always the person that's choosing a job over their family. It's always the person that, is tapped out. It's always the person that is really struggling, like, that really wants to travel and is stuck in motherhood, or stuck in parenthood, or stuck in a marriage, or a dead end marriage. And when you really look at it, you're like, okay, they all have superiority complexes. Like, movies are based on people with superiority complexes, because the
yeah. It
whole
makes it
movie's
makes it's good for
about,
TV. Yeah.
yeah, about your inner thoughts and how you feel like you're being victimized by something you have control over, something you signed on for. You decide to have children. You decide to get married. You didn't only decide to get married. When your marriage is not doing well, you're a willing participant in the marriage. So you're the one that's unhappy. The other person's obviously getting what they want out of the marriage.
Yes.
So whether they're badgering you, whether you feeling they're talking down to you, whether you feeling like they always got something to say to you, you have to say something, because they're
Yes.
saying something. They're saying exactly what they feel about you. They're saying exactly what they think about you. They're saying, they're starting a discussion, and it's up to you to say, listen, don't talk to me like that. Listen, this is what needs to be done. I'm not going to, if you feel this way about me, or you feel like I'm not living up to your standards, you might want to really invest in somebody who is. You have to stand up for yourself from the beginning of the relationship, and you have to understand who you're with. You have to understand the long-term investment of who you're with. And you have to understand that there's certain things about the person that's not going to change. If they was ambitious when you met them, they're
Yes.
going to be ambitious in the middle of the relationship. They're going to be ambitious in the end of the relationship. And if their ambition causes you to feel uncomfortable or insecure, it's not on them, it's on you to figure out how you can coexist in a relationship, or looking in the mirror and saying, I can't coexist in this relationship, and they deserve someone who's either as ambitious as they are, or really is fueled by their ambition.
Well, I'm glad that you said that, because I think that segues into the next point. If you don't, is it okay to move forward?
Oh, definitely.
How do people that have a superiority complex, how does that affect their relationships?
Definitely, which we touched on a little bit in talking about what is it truly to be have a superiority complex. And obviously we didn't touch on the obvious. So we didn't state the obvious of, the vain person, the person who's just doesn't care about what other people feel, doesn't really deal with other people. They look at other people as less than. I
Hmm.
mean, that's the obvious. So we didn't really want to touch on that within the relationship because that's glaring. You can see it. You can see when it's happening. But what we don't see is the person who's playing the victim or the person who's supposedly in an inferior position, but they're not standing up for themselves. So how does that affect our relationships? And having a superiority complex, how does that affect our relationships?
Because, like we mentioned a couple of minutes ago, they are running the relationship from behind.
Definitely.
If you're not a willing participant in the relationship, if you're not expressing your concerns or the things that you're not getting from the relationship anymore, then you're part of the problem.
Definitely.
So if you are either closing up and not being present, you're part of the problem. If you decide to step out and create a whole new relationship because you're not getting what you want from your current relationship, you're part of the problem. Every time that you walk away or leave the house or you take advantage of a moment that you can have those conversations, you're part of the problem. And I think that people don't really necessarily see that because they think that they're doing the relationship a favor by not bringing things up because they
Or
know
they
it's
don't
probably
want to
not gonna.
argue.
Yeah,
Or
they
they
don't
don't
want
want
to
to
argue.
argue, but you signed on to be in a relationship, which is arguing for the rest of your life, which is
Yeah,
coming to
but
common ground for the rest of your life, which is going to take, when we're on opposing sides, we're going to disagree and we're going to argue until we're on the same side.
and
So
argue doesn't mean that we're arguing maliciously, like we're calling each other names, and we're being disrespectful. It just, like you said, is being on opposing sides and having the conversation until we are on the same side.
definitely, well,
And
let's be clear here. When it gets to that point where we are disrespecting each other and yelling at each other, it's because we didn't tackle that issue from the
yeah,
gate.
yeah,
We allowed it. Somebody took a step back, and somebody didn't. They allowed it to snowball into this big thing that you can't recover from.
yeah,
Now you end up feeling like, whether it's coming from a place of insecurity, whether it's coming from a place of superiority, whether it's coming from a place of feeling inferior, it's happening, and you're lashing out now because it's piled on, as opposed to attacking the issues as they come. And people don't want to put in the work. And it should be a passion. You should want your relationship to be in the greatest place all the time. And if you have an issue all the time with your relationship, you might need to start thinking about, is this relationship for you? Because if you're never happy in a relationship and you feel like there's always an issue, then obviously you and that person can't coexist. Obviously, that's a glaring sign that you might need to evaluate the overall relationship. Because if you can't bring up the little issues like, listen, you went to work, you worked overtime three days this week, so make sure next week we do set aside some time for one another. No more overtime for next week. We put in the work, we did everything we need to do. Like, you clear it up before it snowballs into this bigger issue. And now all of a sudden you're like, you always working, you're making it an always thing as opposed to an isolated week. You know what I mean? Now it's you do it all the time. And they're like, well, I didn't think you had a problem with it because you never said anything. And when you're spending the money, you don't have a problem with it. And when we're paying our bills, you don't have a problem with it. Or we have a little extra to save, you don't have a problem with it, because they think that you're on board. But really, you would trade the money for the time. So
yeah,
you need to make that clear.
yeah, and let's be clear,
Definitely.
that should be something that should be said, and it
Definitely.
shouldn't just be assumed, because like you said, and even with the strengths that we talked about earlier, it's when you meet a person that is assertive, there's benefits to being around an assertive person,
Definitely.
right?
They open up
So
doors.
and anybody who's around an assertive person benefits from being around that person, and they enjoy it when they are on the same side as that
When
person.
it's convenient.
Yeah, but as soon as they're not on the same side of that person, then it becomes a thing.
Or a bigger thing than what it needs to be. And then
Yeah,
you're looked at because there's 27 other people that's on your side. Because let's be clear here, how many assertive people are there? There's less assertive people than there are people who aren't assertive.
yeah,
So they tend to pile up and you tend to have 27 people on your side. But not once did somebody take a step back and say, but you chose this assertive person. The
Yes,
person was this way when you met them.
exactly.
So if you're going to be fair about the relationship, you have to understand that the person was that way when you met them.
Mhm.
So you're trying to steal what's great about them. And when it was convenient, when they was opening up doors for you, it was okay. But
Mhm.
now that it's affecting you or close a door on you, now you have an issue.
Mhm.
So you have to be clear about what you want. Let's be clear here. You joined the relationship. We're talking about accountable relationships. You have to be accountable for who you picked as a partner and the attributes they had when you picked them and when
Mhm.
you chose them. We're not talking about people who changed. We're talking about people who showed that attribute, people who you enjoyed that attribute in them when it was convenient, and then they took it back.
Yeah, I mean, because obviously you're with them because for that reason. You know what I mean? So it gets real weird when, it's something that you start to dread about the person or something you start to resent, and then it becomes a bigger issue than it should be.
Definitely. Let's talk about how it affects the relationships to always base relationships on how a person feels.
Oh yeah, that too.
That's a red flag for me anytime when I'm listening to a person and they're like, well, I'm entitled to how I feel and they need to understand how I feel. And I'm always saying to them, do you not think the other person has feelings too about that same topic? So why does your feelings supersede their feelings? Think about that. Every person you come in contact with also has feelings. So that's a glaring sign that you have a superiority complex because you believe your feelings should always supersede somebody else's feelings. And if you're dealing with just feelings, then obviously that person has feelings, you have feelings. How do y'all come to a common ground? How do you decipher whose feelings are more important? How do you understand whose feelings will take precedence over another person's feelings? Principles. You have to have principles that govern the relationship. Obviously, if a person got shot and they're on the floor, you're tending to them, they have a higher need. So obviously that's the principle. The person with the higher need is going to take precedence over the person with the less glaring need, right? So that's always something that's in place before you have the tragedy or before you deal with the emotional aspect of it. You're putting things in place so you understand whose emotions to deal with at that particular time because it's glaring. It's something that's the importance is there and it's already within the principles or the structure of relationships that we take care of that person's emotions first. A lot of people say, "Oh, it's the woman, so we need to take care of the woman's emotions." Like we watch shows all the time where the kid dies and somehow the woman has the most emotion towards it. So the man has to take care of the woman's emotion towards the kid dying, and their kid died as well.
Hmm.
You get what I'm saying? So we have to do it together. We have to get through this together, and we lose track of together. We're going through this together. Every last tragedy, every last trauma, every last thing we go through, if we're a team, we go through it together. If we're friends, we go through it together. So we have to understand that we're going through anything together. And people lose track of that when they start believing their emotion supersedes what we signed on for. And what we signed on for is to get through whatever we have to get through together.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. And another point is the being around the temperamental person, right? The
Definitely.
person that can just spaz out in 2.5 seconds, so everyone's
Jerry
tiptoeing
Briggs
around
of the
them.
world.
Huh?
Jerry's of the world.
The Jerrys of the world.
Jerry's of the world. She's talking.
I
She's
wouldn't.
got insight on our relationship from time to time.
I mean, I don't. I wouldn't say. Oh, well, yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Well, I mean, around me, you are temperamental. You're not a temperamental person.
What?
But
Yes. Well,
around
it's all.
me,
It's allowing. It's really allowing waking up on the wrong side of the bed or feeling some type of way and expecting everyone to move the way you want them to move because you feel a certain way.
definitely,
And it's
you
a
late
different.
for
It's a
work and I
different level
call
of
you.
emotion, huh?
I said you're late for work and I
Yeah.
call you and you're like, "Huh? What you want?" And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Well, I didn't wake you up late.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I just called for X, Y, and Z." And then, and then you pass that on to me, and then now we in turmoil.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's obviously understanding that you woke up on when you saying temperamental, you woke up on the wrong side of the bed. Everybody didn't wake up on the wrong side of the bed. So
I
it's up
think
to
that.
you to understand like Yeah, I gotta jump in the shower real fast. I'm gonna call you when I get out. I woke up late. So you're not pushing that on the other person. You're explaining some your circumstance, and then you'll call them when you're in a better space or you're in a better headspace because you're rushing at that particular time. Instead of taking that 5 seconds to do that, what you want?
Hmm.
You get what I'm
And
saying?
we tend to take the people that we are the closest to for granted. So we
Definitely.
shortcut conversations, we shortcut phone calls, we shortcut things because in our minds, where they're going to be there, they should understand. But those are the people that we should be taking out the time to have the conversation. So
Definitely.
yeah, I kept snoozing and I turned my alarm off by accident. That's nobody's fault but mine, right?
Mhm.
And so I shouldn't be short with the people that I'm around and then pleasant to the people when I get to work. Like, why do they get the best version? Why should they get the best version of me when I just crapped on everyone that I actually that called me in the morning or did whatever? Like, I didn't have time for it. So it's governing the relationship with those types of emotions where you think that things are going wrong for you in certain moments and you expect everyone to stop with you and tiptoe around you or deal with you with kitty gloves because you can't deal in that moment.
Definitely. It's the vanity. It's the vanity. It's truly having a superiority complex. And we let that skate by because it's so normal that it became okay. It became okay in our relationships. But when you look around and you ask people, how many healthy relationships do you see around you? How many accountable relationships do you see around you? They're looking at you and they're like, and they're counting in their head. And it's because we made it normal to put our emotions above other people's principles
Mm-hmm.
or above the relationship's principles. So you're right. You take the time and you invest and you take a step back and you say, this is another person on the side on the other end of the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Let me treat them as such. This is a person I love. This is a person I care about. This is a person that, you know, I need to nurture and give a clear understanding of what I'm going through. Like, let's be clear here. I woke up on the wrong side of the bed, or I woke up wrong, or something's just happened to me. But this person is here to support me in anything I need. So they do understand that I need to rush out, so I can't talk to them at this present time. But if what they are talking to me about or what they called me about is something that takes precedence over me getting on being on time for work, I'm going to take the time to say, listen, work don't like the priority is them, and I just have to be late for work. So there's two parts of this. Some at some point you woke up and they know that you have to get to work. So whatever they called you for is just probably to shoot the breeze, see how you was doing, see what's going on, and you'll hit them on the way to work, or you call them on the way to work. And then the next thing can be something actually went wrong where they need your assistance. And the only way you're going to find that out is taking a deep breath and taking the time to understand there's a person on the other side of the phone that you care about and love and appreciate.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship and nurturing the relationship supersedes what you're feeling at
Mm-hmm.
that present time.
And then you also to have the person who believes that they can't catch a break.
Definitely. Everything life is happening to them.
Oh my God, yes.
Life is
So
happening to them.
that person is hard to motivate. That person is hard to like even give advice to, and they govern the whole entire relationship because they're so pessimistic that they can't get out their own way.
Definitely. And they
And
don't
they
know
have
that they're
a thousand
attracting it.
excuses.
They're attracting all the negative energy.
Yeah, and they have all these excuses why they are where they are and no plan to get out of it. But yet you have to understand that
They always going through something.
they was going through
Like we always talk about how if you join a gang, you're gonna witness more murder. You're
yes,
gonna witness more death. If you work in an old folks home, you're gonna witness more murder, more death.
more
Not
murders.
murder, excuse me,
Jesus.
more death. Like you're gonna encounter more deaths and more people you're attached to that's going to die. You know what I mean? Like if you put yourself in a position to have tragedy around you, you're gonna have more tragedy.
Mhm.
So if you put yourself in a position where you're dealing with people who are letting you down all the time, people who are not showing up, people who, you know, people who say they're going to do something and don't do it, or people who treat you poorly, or people who yell at you, or people who disrespect you. And you're constantly telling yourself, well, they're human, or well, you constantly giving that person excuses, you're going to have a harder life. If you stand up for yourself, you're surrounded by people who love you and show you that they love you. Only allow, you have high standards. You only allow people in your life that actually benefit you and you can actually benefit, then you're gonna have a more eventful life.
Well, let's be clear, Aziz.
Mhm.
Those people may be giving that same energy and that same type of effort. So that's why they surround themselves around those same people. So, you attract who you are also. So
Yeah.
that's also, needs to be said as well. You're not, there's not always a good person on the other end of a crappy situation because they are the most amazing person. Sometimes they are not, they're just as crappy as they are. There's levels to
So,
it,
so
right?
let's be clear here. I was nowhere near saying that that person's an amazing person, because amazing people want amazing people around them.
Okay.
So I'm literally saying if you're amazing, you're going to attract amazing people. What I'm saying is if you have all those people, because they have a superiority complex. So, like what you just said, they deem themselves this savior and this amazing person and this person that they only human and this very understanding person. They believe that. So they exaggerate the feelings of their own superiority, their own importance. Oh, I can save everybody, and everybody that needs saving, I'm there for. So they surround themselves by those people. So therefore, they're going to constantly have issues.
Mhm.
I'm not saying they're amazing for doing it. I'm saying that's why they have those issues.
Mhm.
It's not that they're attracting the same people. They consider themselves nurturers, and they're attracting people they have to nurture without getting nurtured back in
Yeah, they're
return.
not getting there. They're not
So they
getting.
don't have an equal relationship. They don't
Mhm.
have a relationship that pours back into them. So really, they look at relationships as a charity and not a relationship, because relationships are give and take.
Mhm.
Love is a boomerang. You throw it out, you should get it back.
Mhm.
So if they're just constantly giving, 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 of course they're going to be drained. So there's no way I think that's an amazing person. Actually, I think that person has a superiority complex.
Well, I just wanted to be clear, because some people are going through life by themselves because they were crappy people and they have to build up to being around
Oh,
people
definitely,
that
definitely,
are better than what they were. You know what I mean?
definitely,
Like it's not a given. Like it's, I mean, it's but so long. It's only a matter of time before a person that is not giving as much as is an amazing person or not so amazing, whatever. It's draining the relationship, and they're with amazing people, people that believe in principle. That relationship is not gonna last forever. You know what I mean? Like somebody's gonna make a decision.
definitely.
So
I
I
mean,
just
amazing people make decisions. Leaders make decisions. They
yeah.
make tough decisions to benefit the whole, because they're thinking about the whole. So they understand that if this person keeps draining them, it's not going to be beneficial to the relationship. So they make the decision, whether they want to or not. They make the decision to walk away.
Mhm.
But let's be clear here. We live in this society where the people you're talking about that's always draining people always has that next person to drain.
Yeah, they do.
They
Yeah.
always have the sob story, and they always have the air of that person that's ready to oh, I'm gonna pull you out the hole. I
Mhm.
don't want to look down on you. I don't want to judge you. The fact that people believe another person has the ability to destroy them through judgment, I would say that those people have a superiority complex. Oh,
Yeah.
I don't judge. I don't judge. I don't judge. It's the greatest sign of a superiority complex. Like we all judge. Like, so we all have the right to judge and decide who we want around us. These relationships. This is not, do I help this person off the ground because they fell in front of us? We even have that. We even can make that decision. Do I want to pick this person up? Have to call the cops? Have to wait for the cops? Or do I want to get to work?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Like we all have the right to make that decision,
Yeah.
and that takes a judgment. We at that moment we said work was more important than this person,
Mhm.
which is a judgment. Somebody else is going to take care of that person, which is also a judgment. You're saying somebody else would not have the same job or not have to get to work, will take care of that person that fell
Mhm.
and wait for the cops and do all that. So we all are making judgments on a regular basis. So the people that say they don't judge, they have superiority complexes.
Mhm.
They're trying to look a certain way versus living with the reality that I'm going to judge people based on who they are or based on what I want in my life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the clear understanding. So that's how all those people affect relationships. They
Mm-hmm.
affect our relationships because they have no clue that they're draining the relationships, as opposed to just being who they need to be, being truly honest about who they are and what they think, and getting through the disagreements or getting through the opposites and getting through the differences together so we're on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
An equal partner is a person who actually believes they're looking in the eyes of an equal. So they're not too high, they're not too low. They believe that this person's an equal. We're walking together, and they never lose focus of the fact that we're working together.
Well, yeah, sometimes being on the same page doesn't mean that we're walking in the same direction together either.
Definitely.
So that's another thing too. Like, you may come to the conclusion that we're not meant to be the closest of friends. We're not probably meant
Well,
to
then
be.
it's not a relationship.
What do you
So
mean?
we're talking about accountable relationships. It's no longer a relationship.
There's no longer a relationship with some. But what I'm saying is that when you do, like, we talk about having the conversation, being on the same page. The reality is sometimes you don't get on the same page, and
Definitely.
sometimes you have to make that decision, and sometimes you have to keep it moving. So it's yes, it's no longer a relationship, but you can reflect back on the relationship and say, hey, we spoke about it, we're on the same page, and there's no closure needed because you guys had the conversation.
Definitely. And that goes to how it affects our relationships when you don't walk away when you feel you need to,
Yeah.
because you have a superiority complex and you think that whole person's world is going to fall apart without you.
Yeah.
So you stay because of it. You
Mm-hmm.
don't even have to be their friend to support them.
No.
Like, you could walk away from a relationship when they're in a bad place and still help them through that bad place.
Yeah.
Like, don't do anybody a favor. Don't use your time and your time on this earth to do somebody else a favor by believing that you should stay in a relationship because you're doing the better thing.
Mm-hmm.
You picked each relationship because it benefited you. It suited you. That's what relationships are. We have the right to pick who we want to be in relationships with.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a humanity thing. This is not helping your fellow man thing. This is building loving relationships with people that you're getting to know, you want to spend your life with, and it's going to enhance your life. Anybody that's not doing that, they're not enhancing your life. So stop doing people a favor by staying with them. Break up with them, please, or walk away from them, please, if you don't want to be there.
And that's a good point. And I think that takes us, not I think, I keep saying I think, passive aggressive. That
Mhm.
takes us to the next point of how can we make the adjustment?
Definitely. So when we dealing with having a superiority complex, I think the first two topics and the first two questions we asked, I think it clearly highlights how you make the adjustment. First things first is truly understand what it means to have a superiority complex. It's exaggerating your feelings above others, exaggerating your importance above others that you actually decided to join a relationship with that you told was your equals. So it's first understanding what that is. The next thing is how it's affecting your relationship. It's clearly understanding how do we make the adjustment. So those are the first things. Knowledge is power. So the first thing is asking yourself those two questions before we get to now making the adjustment. How would you say, what would be an example of making an adjustment, Jerry? You would say.
Making an adjustment is taking responsibility for who you are within the relationship and understand and not thinking that and not governing the relationship with your feelings, and knowing that when you signed up for a relationship that it's beyond how you feel in the moment. Um it's beyond your personal needs in the sense that it's not just about you. So when you wake up in the morning and when you are building with other people, you can't just not want to be apart because you're in a bad mood. You know what I mean? It's really checking your emotions and knowing that you signed up for something bigger than yourself. It's like being a parent. It's like being a parent, right? Like the minute that you decide to be a parent, there's days that you want to sleep in, but you if you want to be a good parent, you don't. You know what I mean? You're getting up and you being a responsible parent, and that's what, and that goes across the board.
Or you get up and you call your friend and ask them, can they come over?
Well, that too, yeah, that's also being responsible as well.
But
having
I think I want to be clear. Let's be clear here. Being a great parent is asking for assistance. So if you don't want to get out of bed, make sure you're a great parent by asking somebody to support you when you need the support. If you're tired, ask for help. You know what I mean? Don't do it all by yourself. We forgot to even touch on the do-it-alls. I want to do it for myself.
Yeah. We did it.
Superiority complex that believe it can't happen to them and they need to do everything by themselves and everybody, you know, is doing them wrong. But how you make that adjustment is ask for support, have the discussion, like what Jerry was saying. Like identify, but don't just identify it, have the discussion. You know, be clear on who's in your life and why they're in your life and what's the most important thing is the relationship over the individual.
And also an understanding, like, why is it that I'm annoyed with certain things now, and it's bothersome now, but it wasn't bothersome when I first met them or when I first started dating them, or like it's also understanding that as well, because like we said, there's benefits to being around leaders, there's benefits to being around people that are strong, but why is that not favorable at this point in our relationship? And it's also taking that time and understanding that, and checking yourself and your emotions, just saying like, am I overreacting right now because I'm not feeling good, or I'm not feeling good about myself, or I'm not in the best headspace. I have a lot going on and I'm super sensitive to all the things that's going on around me. It's unfair to make everyone else pay for that.
Definitely.
But we often do.
You have to make a mentality adjustment.
Yeah, you have to make, so that's the first thing,
make a mentality
adjustment is making the mentality.
Ask yourself, is it just like the emotion is real? You're feeling the emotion. So like we always say, the emotion is present and it's real in the moment, but it's not actual. Meaning to really have that clear understanding within the relationship, you need the other person's perspective. You need the other person's point of view to find what's actual. But the emotion is real. So when you're feeling it, now it's your time to ask, to now start a discussion to see is what I'm feeling is it actual? Is it something that's really going on? Or is it something that's in my head and I'm reading too far into it? But you need to have the discussion with the other person. And in making that adjustment, you have to believe that it's not something you should be doing alone. You joined the relationship to have the discussion about the relationship with the person you're in the relationship with. So if something comes up, you have the discussion with them. That's how you make the adjustment.
Well, what advice would you give somebody who lives in their head, and like you said, it's one thing to think about things, and it can turn to this horrible thing when you think about things and you keep it to yourself and you don't want to express it to anyone else, so you're not even bouncing the idea, the thought, the emotion around, or with someone else to even see if it's even accurate.
Definitely.
Like how would you advise a person who thinks it's okay to be in their head, and they need to make the adjustment, but they're not saying anything?
Obviously, what they're doing comes from a place of vanity. They lost track of the relationship. So I would give them uh, uh, a vain example. If you're worried about losing weight in your head, but don't exercise, are you ever going to lose weight?
No. Yeah.
So it's about doing something about it. Anytime you live in your head and just stay in your head and not do anything about it, the problem still resonates. The problem's still there. So it's about identifying the problem, one, and it's about now seeing if the problem exists and seeing if we can resolve the problem. Two, everybody always talks about actions speak louder than words, but like we always say, it's a relationship. Why do we separate them?
We shouldn't.
Words and actions work hand in hand. They're not separated, but we always find who's doing the greater thing. Actions speak louder than words. Okay, I could agree with that statement, but that statement shouldn't be a relationship. Your words and your actions should be a relationship. They should coexist. So yeah, you have the thoughts now, which are the words in your head. And now the action is bringing them words to life by asking the questions and talking about the issue. So my thing always would be, if you're living in your head, you're taking away from the relationship. So make the adjustment. Stop taking from the relationship by believing it's your problem. No, it's our problem.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that's your problem becomes our problem. Anything that's my problem becomes your problem. And until you understand that, it's not just your problem. we have an issue. So you have to change your mentality. So how do we make the adjustment? We change our mentality. How do we change our mentality? We need to have a clear understanding that we join relationships to share life with people, and constantly tell yourself that. Constantly take that risk. Constantly have the courage and be courageous enough to show up on a daily basis with that mentality, even when you don't want to talk. Put forth the effort. Do what you don't want to do if it's going to benefit the relationship.
Yeah.
Never give in to that. And obviously, what leads us to our last question would be, what will we gain from the process? And obviously, we'll gain an accountable relationship.
Hmm.
Obviously, we'll gain maybe a bunch of going back and forth, maybe a bunch of discussions, maybe but we'll gain clarity. This whole season is about, let's be clear. In that relationship, no matter what happens, you'll gain clarity. So instead of walking around with the superiority complex, believing that you supersedes us, you need to start believing that us supersedes me, and us would actually take care of me. Because if us is not taking care of me, I gotta go find a us that takes care of me.
Hmm.
If us is taking care of me, then it's working perfectly. I need to sustain and maintain us. So how does not having a superiority complex benefit our relationship? It allows the relationship to flourish. It allows both people involved to have security within the relationship, and we have the foundation of understanding that we're in this together.
And also, it also allows the person to be confident that they actually belong, and they are the best version of themselves.
Definitely.
Because it's not about, we're not going to always agree. We're not always going to be, we may start off on the not being on the same page, but if we have the same end goal, then we should be able to work through it to get there. And if we both put our feelings aside and we both allowed our principles to dictate our next move, and if we both truly believe that, then you then you have nothing but a healthy relationship ahead of you.
Definitely. You have nothing but an accountable relationship, and you gain confidence.
Yeah. Hmm.
And we don't want to confuse confidence with having a superiority complex. You
No.
should be confident that you're in the best relationships possible.
Yeah.
That should be a confidence.
Hmm.
This is the best relationships I have around me, and you are able to celebrate your relationships. Don't never let anybody tell you because they're not in great relationships, you shouldn't celebrate your relationships. What you gain
Absolutely.
is a sense of confidence and the ability to celebrate your relationships and celebrate life through your relationships. So to identify you have a superiority complex is not taken away from you. It's giving you insight to what you need to adjust to make sure your relationships flourish. And in the process, you will gain a great relationship by knocking out your ego. By
Absolutely.
eliminating your ego, you will gain a closeness and a connection. So just know, in this segment of Accountable Love Podcast, we're talking about how superiority complexes affect relationships. So don't affect your relationship with having a superiority complex. If you believe that you have one through listening to the podcast, you know, take a deep dive, look in the mirror. If you don't know if you have one, ask the people around you. Have the
Absolutely.
discussion. Start the discussion. Have them listen to this podcast. Listen to the podcast together. Really identify if any of these issues are glaring within your relationship. Are you the person who's putting everybody down and treating everybody poorly and believe that you're entitled to it? Or are you the person that's being put down and being dismissed and being disrespected and feel like you deserve it? Y'all both have a superiority complex. Y'all both believe the relationship is all about you when it's supposed to be about y'all. If both people aren't flourishing in a relationship, it's not a relationship. It's a codependency.
Yeah.
So
Don't be the person that's stuck in the air out the room, and that can go on both ends.
definitely
Quite
either
honestly.
way. And that's a real simple way of saying it, Jerry. So, you know, this is another Accountable Love. My name's Aziz,
I'm Jerry.
and enjoy.
And you,
Listen, learn, and enjoy.
yeah, comment. Let us know what your thoughts are.
All right. Have a good one.